Happy Venus Day, Collective. Hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to check in since the last video where I had really started to lean into a deliberate, I guess, getting into the holiday spirit into an active role on my part, becoming an active participant. And for anyone that saw that video, as I said in there, I had to really decide beginning this month that I was going to sort of free myself from the constraints of tradition and just sort of really lean into my creativity. And as any person who has gone through large transformations in life might be able to tell you, transformation starts first with a decision. It starts with your mind. It starts with sort of declaring to yourself that you will reconceptualize what something means to you, even if just for the year, and then really just sort of lean into your creativity and make it into something that hasn't been before. So I wanted to check in with y'all and kind of give you a little, kind of a quick little capsule and just how I have been doing that over the last, I guess 2 weeks now, almost 2 weeks since that video when I had my plant haul, which was definitely, by the way, the right decision for setting the tone, for sure. So I wanted to, first, before I forget, I'm going to make myself do this because, as part of the nature of this channel, in some of the earlier videos, I've mentioned that it's important for me not to be too, I don't want to say choreographed, too curated, or, I don't know, too robotic in how I go about these videos. I don't want to be totally unscripted in the sense to where I'm just rambling for like ever and ever on a stream of consciousness type level. So I try to bullet out what I want a video to accomplish. But I also want to not create too much distance between you and I when I'm talking, because sometimes, often, most of the time, a lot of the really good parts of a video exist in between the bullet points that I make. I mean, it's not like I'm looking at a piece of paper the whole time. I've tried to get into the habit of jotting down, 3 main things, and then within all of those 3 things come a lot of rich detail that I've either researched or fill in with personal anecdotes or sort of something that comes into my head at that moment that I think, aha, like a little light bulb. So I will stick to that model for the most part, but what I will ask you to do in sort of evaluating my approach to this channel and really just in pursuing the whole mission of getting more people to come and not even if they don't want to participate, listen to somebody talk about things that there aren't many spaces to talk about, because so much of online culture, especially social media and like brand channels and all that, is sort of a mix of like heavily curated and performative. Not to say that there's not authenticity there, but a lot of authenticity that I feel that we really need now more than ever and moving forward, that will kind of define more and more social connectivity is I think that gets lost sometimes. So in the but the realistic part is if I want people to come to this channel, I need to do the old razzmatazz for the algorithm. So with that being said, I ask that if you are watching this and you haven't subscribed, to please do that, to please go to the channel page and to hit subscribe if you haven't already. And if nothing else, if you are already subscribed, I love you. I appreciate you. And don't forget to like. If you can remember, sometimes I'm guilty of this too. For a long time, I would watch YouTube channels, and it wasn't until like an embarrassing amount of time afterwards to where I really thought, why haven't I subscribed to this channel? And I would find myself just like relying on my search bar history to go to the same page. And I'm thinking, why am I not subscribed? And sometimes, honestly, I have to realize that it takes the person asking me. They'll ask at the beginning, which is smart because not everyone makes it to the end of the video. And it's at that moment I literally think, oh well, I want to help this person. I really like their channel. I want to help. So I'm going to try to remember starting now to ask you, if you're watching this, to like, subscribe, and even better if you comment, share, because it really feeds the algorithm. And in order to get more people who I truly believe can benefit from being exposed to just these topics, sort of like where conversations in real life in your physical world often don't go, often because we have such brief encounters with one another, especially during the holidays, and everyone's so busy. And then when you are around the people that you love or like, or haven't hung out with a long time, you're not going to necessarily just go right into like you know therapy talk. So I get that. And a reminder again, I'm not a therapist, but as somebody who sort of had this vision of kind of pulling together all of my education, life experience in weathering crisis with grit, and my own personal studies of sort of the esoteric realm, and my fascination that began as a child, and that I found myself circling back to, as many people do in their process of self-integration. You realize like that child in you was brilliant because they were unruined by social pressures and the things that we learn, which is like pressure to conform, and like everyone has this innate desire to be accepted, but children are brilliant enough before they become unspoiled to realize that they should be accepted in their originality, their own authenticity. So that's why I often say I'm like an evangelical when it comes to knowing your moon sign, because your moon sign is, I think, the most clear reflection of how you interacted with people and in the world around you when you were a child, because it's your expressive planet or placement, and your emotive placement, and often the way in which you communicate, like your love language. And so it isn't until we get older and start becoming socialized, for better, but often for worse, that we start masking parts of ourselves, because whether erroneously or maybe correctly, depending on what environment you're in, you have observed that people respond in different ways, sometimes not favorable to your sort of authentic expression of self. So everyone kind of spends the better part of their adolescence and adult lives sort of like calibrating that for, and there is a fine line. Like, I'm not going to just jump into any old situation and start going down the esoteric rabbit hole, but like, I mean, leave me there long enough and I might, like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm not into it if someone else brings it up. So, but there's a courage, like it requires a degree of courage, because I'm like everyone else. I prefer to be accepted, but if you've weathered enough in your life, and especially as a child, if you kind of experience like being ostracized, or like, not really fitting in, even when you were in your mind sort of doing the dance of conformity, at a certain point you just start to go, well, even when I'm doing what my take on conforming is, I still seem to be like sort of on the fringe. So I guess if you experience the right type of crises and like experience rejection in any form, after a while, like I've mentioned in the temperance card video and probably others, you really just are like, well, shit. I mean, what else is there to be scared of? Like, I might as well just be my authentic self and kind of refer back to the early chapters of my journey, and that's where the inner child healing comes in, which I have been leaning hard into for the holidays, because I was talking to my therapist about this for the last like two weeks, I guess, about how, I gave myself permission to not try to recreate something where all the pieces weren't there anymore, to not try to go through the motions just for the sake of like some perceived idea of stability or whatever. The way we've always decorated this house, back when it was me and like someone else, this is how we used to do it. And it's, again, realizing that just wasn't going to serve me well. So I adopted that childlike mentality of like, what if it was just childlike me that like went up to the attic and saw all the bins as just raw materials, like forgetting about the tree, pretend like, you didn't know there's a tree there. And you just looked at everything as just raw materials to work with, sort of like the building blocks in the rebel analogy I made in the temperance card video. And that got me really excited. So like I went to the attic and I brought like two pop-up bins that I have, like they fold flat and they pop up. And so I just went in there one day and I was like, okay, let's just start like opening some of these bins with random materials, and then just like filling up my little bins that were manageable enough for me to like walk down the attic, pull down. So it's like I had to be very careful with like how much stuff I was trying to carry down at once by myself. But it really like reframing the whole endeavor was very helpful to me, and it got me actually excited. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm having fun, instead of just like it being some milestone I was going to push myself through. I was like, oh, I think I'm starting to have fun. And then it just took on a life of its own. It just became, I realized like, I let go of that sense of urgency that I was explaining to my therapist, like how I realized how that was like a habit. Like it was like a mentality, because I was so used to having this performative approach to the holidays, because I was used to always doing like the decorating by myself. That's the thing. Even when I had somebody, you know, I never really understood why I did the decorating by myself. Like it was a ritual that was solo anyway. So I found that there was no pain or any sense of someone missing just in the act of decorating. I'm like, well, that's just been the norm, which is, is its own thing to explore, which, that's what I pay my therapist for. Uh, so that's the thing. It was like, well, this is just decorating and creativity, which it's been my game my whole life. So when I was explaining this stuff to my therapist, and I was saying how I felt this like, I talked about my plant haul video, and just sort of talking about my own mental process of like getting in the right mood for the holidays, not because I felt like I had to, because I felt like I owed it to myself. I felt like, as somebody that likes creating magic out of the mundane, part of that is like all of the month of December when you walk downstairs and like, oh yeah, look at all the lights. I mean, the child in you is still there and wants to, when it gets dark at like 4 o'clock, be like, oh well, the bright side is literally like everything is bright and shiny with all my little indoor twinkling lights and my outdoor lights. And so I wasn't going to miss out on that, especially this dark last month of the year. So I found that the process of decorating has just been an ongoing thing I've been doing. It's like I got like the base sort of like this first wave of decorating. So I was like, well, if this is all that I do, that's fine. It's almost like that was sort of like the obligatory in my mind. This is my foundation of my decorations. And then a funny thing happened, because each day I was like, okay, it is it's Christmassy enough around here, you can definitely see that it's decorated, but it became like, that wasn't the point. I was like, well, I want to decorate this thing. I would get like some idea of like seeing some ordinary thing I had out and being like, well, I could add this little accessory and now it looks festive. Um, Even like little like terrariums that I have this one terrarium that uh, just is sort of a year-round thing, and then I had this sort of really rustic looking Christmas tree ornament, like it was like really cheap, like a dollar store type thing from years ago. I was like, well, if I just stick this in here, now it's like a Christmas terrarium. And then I remembered these little like stick-on lights that I had, these really compact lights, and I thought, oh well, if I like take this light and attach it to the lid of the terrarium, now it's like a little light up terrarium. So um, actually, let me just grab it. It's right here. Let me not miss the opportunity to share. So this is my terrarium I'm talking about, and it's really basic. Like really, I have it out in the kitchen all year. Um, but it's got like just some moss down there, and then like anytime I find like a really great like piece of like lichen or like stuff in the yard, just collected items that I'm like, where should I put this? Or then like air plants that um even ones that like are kind of past their prime that may or may not be still alive, kind of just stick in there. So what's cool is like this is like the really cheap sort of bottle brush tree ornament that at some point had already lost its little like string at the top. So I just set it right in there and it was perfect. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, festive terrarium. And then here's the little light that I stuck onto the ball. And so now it's like a very, very simple pleasure, but like a lot of joy is brought personally to me with just those two little things. So it also kind of like has created this new reason sometimes for when I'm like feeling in a funk. I'm like, just go outside, walk around the yard, walk around outside, see what kind of cool shit you can find, stick in your terrarium. Sometimes it's just those little things that really help get me through these few months to where you really have to be creative to find a reason to go outside. So that's the stuff I've been doing, and it's like every day a new thing seems to present itself to where I'm starting to like look at the calendar and be like, okay, at what point will I just stop adorning things so that it doesn't become like this whole process to put everything away? I've already decided I don't care, and the motto is going to be art for art's sake. And the good thing about having like a sort of gilded nature as your theme is that you don't look entirely insane if it takes you like all of January and creeping into February to like get everything down, because really it's just, well, it's always planty around here. Uh, but if you just sort of slowly pull the overtly Christmas things, at least package them up gradually, it doesn't become too overwhelming, because by and large, the thing being highlighted are my plants everywhere, plants and cut flowers and all that. So, and even the ornaments that I did pull, I avoided the memory lane train wreck of the big haul of ornaments that are essentially like a collection over the better part of my adult life of things, which most of them are mine anyways, like and are memories that don't have to be associated with somebody who betrayed me and created a lot of bad memories that I experienced this year. But it's just the fact that the ones that are like sort of the triggers are mixed in indiscriminately with those. So I was like, it's okay to not go down that road this year. By the time next Christmas comes around, I will be plenty far removed from the events at the beginning of this year to handle that. So again, giving myself permission to not be confined by what some no longer relevant idea of decorating um, is. And so as I kind of talk these things out to my therapist, she sort of offered to me one day, and I was like, this is exactly why you have a therapist, because I'm rambling most of the time, as a lot of people who attend therapy will tell you. You're doing most of the talking, funnily enough. And then it's like having somebody trained and who you pay to listen to you ramble, who knows when to stop you right there and ask you, they want to pull on that string a little bit more, or they like come up with some brilliant way to sort of um, encapsulate like what it is that you're getting at. And so my therapist offered up the word that, I was like, yes, this is exactly it. She said, it sounds like this is like sort of for you a process of embodiment. And I was like, that's right. Because the thing I was running into is I was telling her how important like the decorating process, like art for art's sake, was like in the healing, sort of like art therapy mixed with like the practical desire to like get some things up for Christmas. But how there were triggers, there were like, because just the nature of going through the holiday season and then remembering like ways that you were deceived, like things making sense and clicking from last Christmas. And then you go back to memory and you're like, you get all mad again because you're like, damn, now that makes sense. And so I found myself not being able to dodge those things, and nor did I want to, because it was that energy that I used. I was like, this is energy, as I've said before. It's all energy, good, bad, whatever. It is usable. And so that's where, just like a true artist, I was like, okay, time to just like spit it all out. Time to just go hard on something creative and create something beautiful with this raggedy ass energy that if I didn't channel it, would have just become like this wretched feeling inside that just compounded. And then by the time you get to Christmas, you're like, wow, this is like not ideal to be holding inside and taking into the new year. So that is why I have been going so hard on creativity, because I'm not going to dodge the feelings, because I've come way too far for that. And uh, there's been so much gained in actively committing to this process. So while I wouldn't have chosen to undergo this process, I'm actually really proud of how I just sort of like leaned into it, because there was really no other way. So I told my therapist that, like, I had been on this like roll about making longer videos more regularly, but how, I felt that I was sort of like in this state to where I could talk about things just fine, but the danger was, of course, when new triggers and like sort of processing these things would happen sort of regularly just by virtue of like the process. um there was a danger of, those 3 bullet points that I say that I like to frame the whole video around, of it becoming like, without me even realizing it, a personal therapy session. And not that, I there are colors of that here and there, but I I really do try to make the things that I do share about my own experiences useful to somebody who's watching. Like, because, if I wanted to create a channel where it's just like spilling tea and being like, can you believe this? Like, sort of a gather around, girlfriends, or, guys too, whoever. If you like messy tea being spilled everywhere, then this does not exclude any guys from that. And that's fine. Like, some people that's helpful for. Some people want to see that. That's just not um, really the purpose of this channel. Even if like little flavors of messiness get sprinkled in, that's just by virtue of how messy the person that betrayed me was. Like, it's almost, the challenge is to sort of package it up into something uh, useful without really going into just how messy and deceitful and um, just absolute disaster the behavior and the compounded lies and the sort of pocket realities that were created were. And so it was the holidays that became most loud. Uh, and so the one anecdote I do want to share with you about why I specifically avoided doing a longer video, because, I can encapsulate the basic of it for you now, but a week or so ago, it would have turned into its own thing for like 30 minutes. So long story short, one of the most triggering memories was, back in January, like right before everything blew up, and I found out just the surface level of like the cheating, and then of course more and more was revealed as I was sort of like pulling myself through this depression that, um, and being treated so poorly and not understanding why. I was like packaging up these decorations and specifically these ornaments, and it was like these ones that like either had his name or that like he that were clearly like about him, like there was one ornament that like my aunt had given him that was like a Captain America, like a Marvel type thing, or ones that like had like both of our names on it, or just like experiences, just things that were clearly like us type things. um and there, the most notable one was like he had given me one year this Wally Funko Pop thing, and this was like within the last 2 years. It was a pretty recent gift. And just last year, I was so proud. I had found this these string lights that were tiny little colorful lights. So if you've ever seen the movie, where Wally like wraps Eve around with those lights. And so I had done that on the Funko Pop. And I was just so pleased with it. And we had it like under this other little tree with like kind of our silly ornaments. So it was like this collection of things like that that were clearly like us ornaments and decorations. And I just asked like one day when it was like sort of in between the on and off days, and this, that day happened to be an off one, to where it was just like, all right, well, he's in like being shitty mode today. So I was like, do I need to put these ornaments away separately? I just sort of said it. I felt compelled to be like, you know, this would be a great time, like, for you to just let me know if this, should I put these away with all the ornaments, or should I put these away separately? Like, and sort of leaving him to understand, like, hey, please spare me. And I even said more or less, please spare me, like, having to sift through this next Christmas. And I remember he got upset. He was like, we are going to be together next Christmas. And he almost just like, it created like a moment in him to where it was like he snapped into some other mode, and it was sort of like, why are you saying that? And so I just, I was like, okay, okay, and I remember feeling like reassured at that moment. Because I tried to not be accusatory. I was just sort of like almost like defeated sounding, like, will you please just spare me, like do this one kindness and just sort of smile, yes, smile and nod if I should put these away separately for whatever reason. And so that moment has been the one that has been the most triggering, because it was just one of the many examples to where at every moment of being confronted or asked or whatever about, if there was something going on and whatever, till the very end, he could not give me those, like, this one kindness of sort of sparing future me these very, very messy feelings. So that was the thing. I was, of course, luckily for therapy, I've just gone into and thought, can you believe this shit? And sort of being acknowledged in that way, those feelings being acknowledged, which, yes, is important, but also trying to understand why, even though I can talk about it like this, and I can talk about it without crying or whatever, but um, the anger is real. I'm not going to be all like love and light when the feelings that come are not love and light. I mean, you know, so I told my therapist, like, I would like to keep doing relevant content, and like, it's important for me to be authentic and maintain the authenticity of the whole like origin of this channel. And that's where the word embodiment came up. And she's, so it sort of like gave me this like, uh, I really appreciated hearing it put that way, because I was like, yeah, I guess that is like a good sign. It is a good sign that I was an active enough participant in the process, like mentally, of why I'm doing this, and an active participant in my healing, and like not wanting to be disingenuine and therefore cheating myself out of the progress that had been made thus far. And I thought, yeah, that really is it. Like, I don't want to get on this camera and start like talking to you all about like healing and all this, when really I'm just like, bubbling on the inside, with these unchanneled feelings. And so I thought, you know, I want to stay connected in ways that the purpose for me is, among other things, to inspire other people using my creativity, which is, for you, it might be different. For some people, it's like literally just cooking. Like cooking is an act of creation and also its own alchemy, really. That's a whole nother sub branch of this channel that we might really like dive into next year. But I just hope to show people like, hey, whatever like nasty feelings you got bubbling, uh, use that to propel your creative process, whatever that is. Use it to start cultivating your creative process. Use it to write or to dance or to like, write poetry or like paint, put something on canvas, like even without a plan or form, or like get in the garden and like create something beautiful, a beautiful container, or like cook, whatever. It's art for art's sake is the whole point. It doesn't even have to be for anyone else's consumption. So that being said, all of that being said, I want to just keep the focus simple when it comes to the takeaway, which is embodiment, the sort of natural, like reflective nature of this time of the year. It ends up feeling very liminal too. Like once Christmas hits, it's like that weird space in between like Christmas and like beginning of the year. That is like the best, closest way to describe liminal space that comes every year that I can think of, because you're like, what even is time and place? Like, where are we? Uh, that's sort of what I'm trying to get you to prepare for mentally, because I don't know. To me, it already kind of feels like that. Generally, the collective sentiment. My my cousin sent me this funny, like, I don't know if it's like an Instagram reel or something, uh, yesterday or today. I don't know, remember. And it was just saying like, more along the lines of like, this December is definitely not Decembering the way all the other Decembers have Decembered or something. And I laughed because I was like, yeah, this resonates. But uh, I don't know. I kind of think that that's probably like, if this doesn't resonate with you, well, then you're probably not like watching this channel anyway. I don't know. I kind of think that that is a more shared sentiment than not. But I don't really see it necessarily as like something qualitatively wrong with the world right now. Like, don't get me wrong, there are lots of things that are qualitatively wrong with the world right now, but I kind of think that we are all sort of in this process that we're all still trying to like figure out, but we're all subjected to. I do think we're all being asked to see things differently in a way that long term will put us on a better path towards embodying what it is that we know deep down is more in alignment with like sort of like our grander purpose, like the whole point of all this, and all this, I mean, the whole point of all this whole society that we've created wherever we are, the whole point of friendship, the whole point of love and relationships, the whole point of Christmas. And I think that the problem with like having like the whole living in the pinnacle of like the corporate hellscape, and it's like everything is cross promoted, and you're like, what do these two things even have to do with one another? But it's like the opportunity to brand and make money. So like it's like these collabs to where they seem like more confusing and dizzying than anything else, and you realize like we've become so far removed from the spirit of the season, as like trite as it sounds, to where I frankly think that like this December not Decembering the way all Decembers have Decembered is a sign of your own personal evolution as like a living conscious being right now, and what you are being asked just by like universal energies that I do believe kind of, I don't know if I want to say download or upload or implant or like sort of, they exist within us all, and they all sort of tend to like these feelings tend to arise at just the right times, but the reason that they're arising is because there's often this incongruity, this problem with like the external world and like what our internal world is like guiding us to do, like to in ways to evolve, to sort of for our own betterment collectively. And so I think that if it makes you feel any better, maybe you are kind of, your soul is sort of craving um to feel more in alignment with like what the spirit of Christmas, which is defined by like the themes and archetypes of Sagittarius and of Jupiter, of higher level thinking and morals and ethics, and like part of morals and ethics, and like higher level thinking and like optimism and expansion is embodiment, because otherwise you're just performing, you're just um, pretending and going through a charade of like consumption and like, you know, sort of getting lost in the commercial like symbolism and activity. And all you really wanted was really to like have something simple and intimate and warm and reflective with like the people that make you feel more in alignment. And so if you find yourself in that space of discomfort, I think that you're doing something right. I think that um, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, you're in a period of reflection. Um, Rest may or may not be part of that equation, depending on like what you got going on. You can make rest more a part of it. I would totally encourage you to do so. But that's where our Four of Swords comes in. That card that you see in the foreground. It's not a very lengthy discussion there because I've pretty much already laid the foundation for it in this video the whole time I've been talking. It's go back and watch the Three Swords video too if you really want to understand what the symbolism of making it to the Four of Swords is. You have to have your Three of Swords, which visually the card will tell you what that's about, in order to get to your Four of Swords. And why is Four of Swords considered a positive place to be? Well, fours in numerology, fours are stable. And the way to remember, so no matter what card you're looking at, no matter what suit, in this case, we're talking about swords, which is mental processes. Like swords represent air energy. So Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius are the zodiac archetypes that are linked to sword suits, because those are air signs, and air is linked to communication and like mental processes, sort of like the exchange of ideas, thoughts, the broadcast, the things that go across the radio waves, um, both in ways that we communicate and we see one another communicating, but even in the unseen ways, like ideas exchanged sometimes just by enough people collectively engaging in the same thought process. So Four of Swords is a place you get to in your mind. Now there are things you can do in your physical life to tend to like that tend to support more or less a state of repose and reflection in your head, and that's all again part of embodiment. Like you can't sit there and be all like, yeah, I'm like I'm meditating and I'm doing all this stuff, and meanwhile I've got like the TV and like this screen and that screen and like 8 people around you. No matter what your intention that you set on the inside about, oh yeah, doing I'm doing meditation more this month and I'm being in a state of reflection, you actually have to arrange your physical world in such a way that supports that. Like, I mean, you're human. Shut off the noise and the distractions if you really want to feel that Four of Swords energy uh, inside, like in your head. So um, fours are stable, and it's just like the four corners, like of a square or of a house. You think of a foundation, you think of four. Three is not a foundation, but four is a foundation. You can build stories on four. You can build more layers on a four. That's solid. And so that's where you need to be. You need to be in your Four of Swords so that you can build upon that foundation mentally. Um, and as you can see, the card itself, like it's like this person in a state of effigy, but it's not death. It's not like a wake or a funeral or something. So this is like a deliberate period of rest and calm and meditation and reflection as depicted on the card, but also depicted on the card. You see that there's 3 swords on the wall, and then there's 1 sword below the figure. And what that basically represents is like put your battle weapons to rest. Like you don't need the arsenal. You can hang them on the wall. Put those all over there. But keep your one sword like um, close at hand. Be ready to respond. Like we're not going into hibernation, although that sounds amazing sometimes. You still need that one sword. Like you still need to be ready to respond. But if there's nothing to respond to, we'll keep that one sword close at hand, but sort of tucked underneath, just in case. So that's what the Four of Swords is. It's deliberate. It doesn't just happen, right? Like we live in a modern society. It's not just going to be like distraction free and commercial free and like Christmas Carol free everywhere. And you want some of those things in doses, but you want to control the doses, like because if you are not in control, they're just going to bombard you every which way through every screen that you own. And so don't forget to set the process right in your head, make your physical world match up as much as possible so that the process in your head can continue in the Four of Swords energy. You don't want to slip back. And so like I was saying earlier about like the turmoil in my head, I didn't want to go back to Three of Swords. I've come too far to be Three of Swords. There's no need to get heartbroken mentally about something that is not uh, a new situation. There are no new facts at this stage. It's just like uh, triggers that I could have anticipated coming, but I knew as part of the healing journey, you can't force the process. You have to still like be an active participant, and I can't force the feelings of like going through the motions of the holiday traditions alone in August. I mean, because if I had tried to go ahead and do that, number one, that doesn't even make sense. I actually don't know how I would even do that. Unless, of course, I had adopted a very problematic mentality back then and said, you know what? I don't even care. Who cares about the holidays? Who cares about decorating? I'm not doing anything this year. I'm just gonna be all about me, and I'm just gonna buy myself stuff. And I don't know if that works for you. That's fine, because like everyone's got their own coping mechanisms. But that wasn't gonna be me, because I've always been somebody that the spirit of the season and the sort of like making your like setting your mind up to like something in like an expansive way and sort of an optimism towards the next year, which we often have to create because life is hard and there are things that we don't know the answers to, and like there will be things that arise next year to where we're like, oh shit, like, but we gotta do what we can with our minds now to put us in the right state. Like put your battle weapons away, but keep your one sword at hand, because you still got to be present, still got to participate in your life. So I thought all of this was a relevant thing to go into now, because Mercury is in Gatorade, as they say. It's Mercury retrograde that it just officially went retrograde. I want to say 2 days ago. But it will be retrograde through for the rest of the year, which seems just a really unfortunate setup for Christmas. But there are other things going on in the sky that tend to mitigate that a little bit, unless of course you just start mouthing off any which way about whatever pops in your head. That might have a way of sort of like putting you in a non-ideal position to start the year. So I want to encourage you to, yes, continue participating in your life, but when you can avoid like just getting on your soapbox about something that can easily just wait and be reflected upon or just put to the side, I would say do that. If you can do the famous phrase that we all like to say, let's circle back next year. Do that. If there's anything that you don't quite have your feelings resolved towards or have the answers to, if you can circle back around next year, um, that might be good, because maybe you can't send a work email that's like, oh, well, yeah, you understand that Mercury is in retrograde until January 1st. So, we're going to have to get back to you on that. But you don't need to say that, because most people are quite happy, if all other things allow, to hear, hey, let's circle back around next year. So That's my advice. Circle back around next year for anything that is just fine waiting, and especially for something that will necessarily, by nature of it, pull you out of your Four of Swords energy. Because, I think that we deserve to enjoy the season in a way that has nothing to do with like how much shopping you've done, or how good the gifts you get or get for other people, or how many ways you can extend yourself to this party and that occasion. And like those are fun things, unless of course you get in this sort of like numbed out stage where you're just like in sort of that survival over caffeinated mode just to like get through the holidays. Like, I think a lot of people find themselves more and more like, I need to get through the holidays, instead of like, oh, it's the holidays, and sort of like being selective about what traditions to participate in and what gatherings to go to, just for the sake of like your own enjoyment. You're one person, and like no matter how much you love this group and that group and that group, if you're lucky to have a life rich like that, it probably will be like kind of a point of stress to like be selective. Um, but you have to do that. Like, you want to bring all of yourself to the gatherings that you do choose. So um, sometimes you gotta make choices, and that's all right. So I hope that everyone watching this has found some way to like carve out a little space for yourself this season. Like, you deserve to enjoy this season too, but more than that, you deserve to feel confident and like with it, and have a foundation mentally that you can build upon for 2024. Because I'm not going to get into it because this is like kind of my job and the research ahead of time to get into. But you're going to need it. Okay. Next year is going to be, it's going to feel a lot faster. That's what I'll say. It's going to be characterized by very, very fast moving energy. And you need to be on solid ground mentally for it. And this isn't like a fear thing. Like, I'm not saying it's going to move fast and to be fearful, but like when things move fast, it tends to make people fearful because like, especially in this digital age, I'm specifically like honing in on the digital um, nature of what I mean by fast moving. And if you look at history, what happens when society goes through like these leaps and bounds when it comes to like um, our infrastructure, which is like digital, heavily digital now more than ever. Um, it can be disorienting. It can make you feel isolated, and like it has like a fragmenting effect. So um, you can handle it. Like, whatever's coming, we can all handle. But like, you can't be like lingering on things behind you that like don't really have much relevance. You need to stop squashing things down, and like to the extent you can, any given moment, let feelings come and then channel that shit somewhere productively. Like, channel it into a piece of art. Channel, go outside and like walk in nature, get some sunshine on your face for like the 1 hour it's really sunny every day. Especially depending on where you are, it might be even like a small window compared to even where I am. So and it doesn't come easy. I have to say, like, I'm telling you this because it came a lot easier for me, even like at the beginning of this year where everything was so much like more raw, and I was closer to like the thing that had like turned my life upside down. Nature did like lots of heavy lifting, like having it be sunny until 8 o'clock. It carried me very far. So I, it almost was like tempting to feel like stress out, like, oh my gosh, am I retracting? Like, why does it feel like I'm backtracking? But it's not. I just like, it really made me realize like, wow, having outside, like having times where I could just be outside with the sun shining, it seemed like forever. That did so much for my mental state. So I just have to plan a little bit better now. I have to like, I have to claw my way there sometimes. I'm like, okay, what am I going to make myself do outside just for the sake of being outside? And so for me, I mean, it's silly, but it's sort of like a very common practice in like Zen Japanese gardens, which the whole point of a Zen garden is the act of caring for it. So it can literally be like, it's less about the aesthetics really than it is about like your active participation. So for me, it's something simple. Like, I have this one broom that I have like in the back, so I could like regularly sweep off the back deck, even if it's like too cold and I know I'm not going to sit out there. it makes me feel better to walk on the deck or to look outside without debris all over it. It makes me feel better to have a reason to go out and like sweep. It's meditative, and it's like just a short amount of time where I'm outside and like I hear the sounds and I feel the sun, and I also am sweeping all the debris and leaves and pine needles off the deck. And I do the same with like the front, um, thresholds and the sidewalk and walkway and driveway. I'll do that. Sometimes even like I'll use the broom on like the whole driveway, when I could easily use like a leaf blower, but it's like there is like a process that I'm subjecting myself to for a very specific reason when I'm out there with the broom. Um, so, especially when it's really cold, it's like I put on my like gardening gloves to keep my hands kind of warm and to keep them from getting blistered. Because sometimes I'm just like going to town with a broom to where I'm like, sometimes where I've forgotten the gloves, I'll like get blisters that I don't even feel forming because it's like I'm in such a deep like sort of like working out angst state, and it feels really good. But it's funny. I used to like just get to this stage in years past where I'm like, oh, well, this is like kind of the cutoff date when I don't really worry about what the outside looks like. But now I'm finding like it's less about worrying about what the outside looks like, and more about like how much better it actually, it's like an added bonus to look out and be like, oh, the walkways are clear. Because then I'm more likely to just randomly like go and walk on the walkways and like stroll along and like not track stuff back in the house from a pragmatic standpoint. So just little things like that. I mean, depending on where you live and who you are, it might be different. Depends. Sometimes you're just gonna have to go to your local park. Um, doesn't matter, just some small piece of earth to where when it's most sunny, even if you have to get in your car, go there, walk around for 30 minutes, there's a lot of value in that. So I'm gonna end um, this video by reading this quote. And this is one of my favorite quotes, but I really want you to sit with this because I find it to be helpful. I go back to this quote all the time. It's one of the most perfect therapeutic horticulture quotes, in my opinion. It's from Alice Walker. And this quote, I suspect, might be where you find yourself, or have found yourself, or will find yourself. Okay. Some periods of our growth are so confusing that we don't even recognize that growth is happening. We may feel hostile or angry or weepy and hysterical, or we may feel depressed. It would never occur to us unless we stumbled on a book or a person who explained to us that we were in fact in the process of change, of actually becoming larger spiritually than we were before. Whenever we grow, we tend to feel it, as a young seed must feel the weight and inertia of the earth as it seeks to break out of its shell on its way to becoming a plant. But what is most unpleasant is the not knowing what is happening. Those long periods when something inside ourselves seems to be waiting, holding its breath, unsure about what the next step should be, eventually become the periods we wait for it is those periods that we realize that we are being prepared for the next phase of our life, and that, in all probability, a new level of the personality is about to be revealed. So, just want you to sit with that and think about that phrase, the weight and inertia. Like, that resonates with me really hard, especially this time of year. It's like and that's very much a Mercury retrograde in Capricorn phrase, because Capricorn can be severe, and Mercury is fast moving. Capricorn can feel severe, and it's like ruled by Saturn, and it's an earth sign, and it's like do your work and then eat. Like it's rigid in a lot of ways, but like it gets shit done. It gets you through the winter. Your Capricornian energy. And Mercury is like fast. It's like moves fast. It wants to go. It wants to think and do it. But like the weight and inertia is sort of like a necessary part of like a mind, a person that's evolving and like getting these like downloads, like the rest of the collective, preparing us to become more prepared for a fast moving world. And it does feel like weight. It's weighty, and it's like even outside, it's very Saturnian. It's cold, and it's like more tasks and more chores and like less daylight. It's weight, and from the outside looking in, it might not look like you're getting anywhere, but the process, having, going through it and still keeping your mind in that four swords, still maintaining that sort of structure and stability of a four when it comes to your mind, that is the progress, because a lot of things happen beneath the surface, and like it's not until you get to the next stage to where things start moving faster that you realize there was progress being made all along. um just there was no like outward visible signs of it necessarily to others, but the value is in the process. Circling back to the decorating and art for art's sake, there's value in the process. And even if I'm adorning little corners of this house that like I never make a video of, or I never show anybody, there is value in the process. I look at it and I remember like the feelings that were transmuted by that creative project that one day. So sit with that quote, and I encourage you to give yourself a break, literally, but also just like emotionally and like metaphorically, like give yourself a break. Everything, it should feel that way right now, is what I'm going to say. Whatever it is that you're feeling, and I suspect that I understand it more than you think, you should feel that way, and that's all part of like the discomfort. Sitting in a period of discomfort is growth. So with that being said, I hope that you've used this last weekend before next weekend, which can feel a little bit like chaotic because it is like the weekend before Christmas. I do think Christmas is Monday, right? um Make sure you carve out something for yourself this weekend, because you might find that you have fewer options next weekend. And no matter where you are, or who you're spending it with, or who you're not spending it with, this time of year and through the next year can be just for you. It can be just for you to prepare yourself to be more capable and uh, prepared to be who it is that you want to be and who you were meant to be starting next year. So I hope you take care of yourselves. I hope you enjoy the rest of this Venus night and the weekend. I'll try to keep the little creative project shorts coming. Maybe I'll do like one video to where I give a little snapshot of all the little creative things that I've done in pockets of my house, and just like do a video on that, where it's not me, but it's just like these little creative things I've done. So, anyways, but again, please like, subscribe, comment. I'd appreciate it. And for all of you watching, I appreciate you. Until next time, bye bye.